what I would like to talk about today is how biological systems change shape. So we heard from Adar that our human body is a beautiful machine. However, it's much too complex, ready to be fully understood. Thus, our ability really to intervene when something goes wrong is rather limited. Now, the reason for that is that we can see our body as a black box. And I would say that even every biological system, animal, plants, and even individual cells can be considered as a black box, such that we can only see the outcome of a given effect. We don't really understand what happens inside that black box that created that outcome. Now, what I'm interested in is to open the black box and dive into it and really understand how biological systems function from the basics. What I'm interested in is to really understand and reveal what are the underlying physical mechanisms that govern their function. Our approach and our assumption is that despite the very broad diversity of all biological systems, they all apply to the same physical rules. Now, it is really important to note that when I'm talking about biological system, and let's take, for instance, a cell, on average, a cell is something like 1 million times smaller than a meteor. And the forces which are important inside those biological systems are 1 billion times smaller than the typical forces that surround us in our everyday life. So obviously, the tools that we need to develop and use in order to study them should be really very unique. In fact, the physics of biology is very unique also because of their very tiny dimensions. So how did I got to work on biology, as I'm not a biologist? Yet nature, and specifically our body, always fascinated me. Yet I did not start with biology. I started in an engineering school at the Technion. So what we do as engineers, we learn how to develop machines or systems. And we do that by taking individual building blocks and integrate them into a functional system. But my personal attraction was always basic science, to say the truth. So in my master and PhD focused on the structure of soft materials. And the basis of what I learned during my studies enabled me to understand how molecules organize and self-assemble into structure like the lipid membranes, our cell membrane. Now, when I finished my PhD, I decided that it was really time to move to biology, because really, these systems are so much unknown and so beautiful to study. So I traveled to Paris, where I joined a group that study biological systems from a physics point of view. For instance, understanding the forces, how speed or the motion of cells are governed and controlled. Now, looking back, all the different stages that I've taken along the way enables me to do the science I'm doing today. Now, I came back to Israel in 2002, and since then I developed my lab. And what we do in the lab is we study biology using simplified model systems. So what we do, what I mean by that, take a biological system, we identify the elementary and the essential building blocks that generate the system. We take these small building blocks and integrate them in a simplified model. This is our version of recreating this biological system in a test tube. Now, defining what are the essential building blocks that we need to study a given biological function is an art. And I discovered it only during my postdoc and during my whole career since then. In fact, it's a very delicate interplay between good intuition, which is always very important, knowledge and experience. In fact, really missing one essential building block can really fail to reproduce any phenomena that we are interested in. So now, let's give you an example of a system that we're studying. So one of the things that we really wanted to study is to understand how cells, individual cells, control their shape. What we know is that the cortex, which is a thin sheet-like structure, which is made from elongated molecules, like we see here, which are interconnected. This is a network, plays a major role in this system. What is unique about the cortex, this very thin sheet-like structure, is that it has the ability to contract. And one of the things that we really wanted to understand is whether contraction alone can explain reshaping of cells. So now, let me show you what happens when you take the elementary building blocks that are important to generate this cortex structure and let them self-assemble into a very thin sheet-like structure. What you see here is a movie of such sheet-like structure, but you see it from top. So you don't really see a sheet here, right? You cannot also see the elongated molecules that I was talking about in that network because they are too tiny. But let's now see what is the resulting structure at the end of the process. Now, the resulting structure looks very much like a leaf or a flower, right? But it has nothing to do with the leaf and flowers that I am talking about because we did not aim to study leaves and flowers, yet we get structure like that, which are also adopted by individual cells, by the way. Now, when we analyzed and tried to find a reason why these type of shapes are generated, we understood that the center of the sheets that was contracting at a faster rate than its boundary. And this is the result and the underlying mechanisms that are also responsible for the shaping of leaves and flowers. So what this study told us that, in fact, the know-how that we gain from studying one system can really be applied to other systems. And this is really tells you something about the universality of all of these processes, which is what we are interested in, right? I'm studying biology from a physics perspective, so obviously this is what we are looking for. Now, how everything that I talked about are related to the beginning of my talk, right? I'm really interested in understanding things from their very basic perspective. So what I'm claiming that the basic science of today is the medicine and technology of tomorrow. Right now, the gap between understanding how a contracting gel in a cell and its application are huge. Nevertheless, one day they will close. Imagine what will happen if, to medicine, and how will it change if everything that was once a black box will be no longer a black box. Now, you have to understand that science is really advancing in a gradual manner, in a communal accumulative process, where the inventions that really change our everyday life are all based on the accumulation of knowledge that we gain from decades of basic science. Thank you very much.